She had stopped speaking days ago, just curled up in her corner, too broken to hope. When the human knelt beside her, offering warm food and even warmer eyes, she didn't move. Not until he whispered, "You don't owe me anything. I just want you safe." In that moment, everything shattered, and something new began. She was dragged through the ash-coated ruins of her homeworld, wrists bound, clothes torn, her pale lavender skin streaked with grime and bruises. Once royalty among her people, now stripped of title and name, she was nothing more than cargo, a commodity to be sold to the highest bidder. Her long silver-white hair had been hacked short in anger, her eyes swollen from days without rest, yet still she walked with dignity. She didn't cry, she hadn't since the day the humans invaded. Until one didn't. The one who saved her, not with declarations or firepower, but by simply reaching out. He first saw her caged in a rusting cell aboard a slaver frigate, curled tight beneath a thermal sheet, arms wrapped around herself, trembling in the cold as others jeered and ignored her. The moment their eyes met, something ancient stirred in his chest. Not pity, not duty, but recognition. She didn't beg. She just stared at him, expecting nothing. That was what broke him. When he bought her, the other traders laughed. "Enjoy your broken doll." They sneered, but he didn't care. He carried her, gently, out of the shadows. Her body flinched at every movement, trained to expect pain, but he never hurt her. Instead, he whispered softly, "You're safe now," again and again, until she no longer recoiled when he drew near. At first, she didn't speak. She wouldn't eat unless he left the room. She slept sitting up, too afraid to dream. But the ship became her sanctuary, warm lights, soft clothing, a quiet bunk she could claim as her own. And him, always nearby, always kind. One night, she awoke screaming, haunted by memories of chains and fire. He came running, not with restraints, but open arms. He wrapped her in a blanket and simply held her as she cried. "I'm here," he murmured, brushing her hair back from her tear-streaked face. "You're not alone." Something changed then, not quickly but certainly. She began to follow him room to room, her silence replaced with small gestures, setting the table, folding his jacket, watching his hands work when he repaired the ship. When raiders struck, it was her scream that warned him, and it was his body that shielded her. He took a blade across the ribs to keep her safe. She'd never screamed so loudly in her life. Blood pooled under him as she held him, trembling, her hands pressed desperately to the wound. "Don't die," she whispered, voice breaking for the first time. You can't leave me." He didn't. He fought through the pain, and she refused to leave his side for days, curling beside him like a child as the med gel worked its miracles. After that, she smiled more, laughed softly. Her eyes lost their haunted glaze, and when she stood tall. But still, she carried her past like a shadow, until the day they came for her. Slavers, the same men who had taken her, found them again. They stormed the outpost where the two had stopped for supplies, armed and vicious. He told her to run, but she didn't. Not this time. She stood in front of him, shielding his wounded side, eyes blazing. "She belongs to us," the slaver snarled. "She's property." But her voice, strong, clear, cut through the noise like fire through ice. "I am not yours," she said. "I never was." And then he rose behind her, bloodied, limping, weapon in hand. "She's not property," he growled, "she's family." Together they fought, she with every ounce of her alien strength, he with desperate resolve. The battle was brutal, close, and ugly, but they won. Barely. He collapsed after the last slaver fell, and she dropped beside him, cradling his face, whispering his name. "Don't leave me," she said over and over. "Please, not now." When he woke hours later, her arms still wrapped around him, he whispered, "I promised I'd stay." She laughed then, the first true, full laugh she'd ever let out, and pressed her forehead to his. From that day on, she was no longer a victim, no longer silent. She became his co-pilot, his equal, his heart. They flew from system to system, not fleeing but living. She began to wear clothes that made her feel powerful again. Soft wraps across her shoulders, braided ornaments in her hair, markings of her lost people painted proudly across her skin. And every time she looked at him, the man who had bought her freedom instead of her body, her eyes softened. They never spoke of love in grand words, but it was there in every shared glance, every careful touch. She'd once been treated like equipment, like a tool, like property. But he taught her to dream again, to hope, to live, to love. And one night, under the stars, when he reached out and took her hand, not as a master, but as a man in awe of the soul beside him, she trembled. Not in fear, but because she knew finally she was free. And this time, she chose to stay.